We have now over 1,000 dead on the Israeli side. We have over 1,000 dead on the Palestinian side. Why would you defend the principle of a ceasefire?
I think that what's very important is to understand and to make very clear that Israel has the right to defend itself, and it must be done in accordance with international law, and there are principles. That's why the UN decided to react. And it's also very important not to give up and to talk to Israel, but also to the leaders of the region, to all those who can have an effect, a positive effect in terms of humanitarian urgencies, because in the very short term we should be concerned, all of us, for the humanitarian consequences in Israel and everywhere in the region. If I take a country like Egypt, for instance, you can imagine for such a country with some financial and economic challenges, what it means. It means that we need to engage with those countries to see what we can do in order to support the initiatives taken by some leaders in the region, taken by some in the United Nations, to allow some corridor, humanitarian corridors, so humanitarian access, to do everything to protect as much as possible the life of innocent civilian people, men, children, women. We need to do everything to try to protect them. And I don't say this easy. This is extremely difficult. The circumstances are terrible, and there is a clear condemnation against Hamas and what they decided to do, which is unacceptable. And we must be extremely clear on that topic, and we are extremely clear on the topic. At the same time, we need to apply the principles of the international law.
You say how difficult it is. Historically, the 27 EU nations have had different views, sometimes opposing views, on whatever happens between Israel and the Palestinians. We have also seen this week in the Commission across the street that there was difficulties. There was one message here, there was one message there. How difficult is it for you to bring that international EU voice as a united voice?
The European unity is fundamental, because when we are united, we are more powerful, and we can have an impact on the circumstances. We can better defend our values and our interests. And this is challenging. This is true. This is challenging. But look, very quickly, the ministers met, and there was a very huge majority to say we don't cut off the development aid, because this is very important, not to give additional arguments to Hamas. On the contrary, we need to support the Palestinian Authority, and we need to make sure that the most vulnerable, they are helped and they are supported. And this was a very strong message expressed by the ministers a few days ago, point one. Point two, I think that we are all on the same page. All of us, we condemn the Hamas. All of us, we support Israel and the Israeli people. And all of us, we are concerned by the humanitarian consequences. And all of us, we know that we need to act in a very difficult landscape to make sure that we try to limit, to reduce the tragic collateral consequences for the region, but also for us in Europe. Because look, if there would be more difficulties at the regional level, we would have immediately huge difficulties on the European soil because of the refugees, point one, and we know how it can be used by some political groups within the EU to fuel some controversies and to make the EU more fragmented, but for another reason, because we know that in our societies across the EU, there are also different feelings, emotions among our citizens, and it's very important not to import within the EU the tragic conflicts at the external level. We have our challenges, we have our domestic difficulties. I think this is not the time to have more difficulties, because we will import within the EU conflicts that would create some dangers for the EU.
Unfortunately, it's only a small step these days to step from one war to the next war. And over the past 1.5 years, all efforts have just about centered on helping Ukraine. Helping Ukraine, is it sustainable in these conditions when we also are going to be forced to help Israel and if we look at the United States in that sense?
We cannot give up, because this decision made by Russia to launch a war against Ukraine is very dangerous, not only for Ukraine and for the Ukrainians, but for the rest of the world, and not only for the European Union, because it would be the message that a permanent member of the Security Council is allowed to launch a war without any consequence. It would give ideas to many others, and it would be the beginning of more conflicts, more difficulties, more poverty, and more tragedies. That's why we need to be very firm. We do not have the duty to forget Ukraine, and you can count on me personally, but also on the European leadership to make very clear that we are with Ukraine for as long as it takes, because this is fundamental for our common future, for the future of the world. Point one. And point two, we need to be consistent. It means that where there are attacks against the fundamental principles, we need to be on the side of those who are attacked, and clearly Israel has been attacked by the Hamas, by a terrorist group. That's why we are supporting Israel and the Israeli people, and we are working very hard with the partners and with the friends across the world to make sure that this idea that there is a common legal framework based on the international law, the humanitarian international law. This is not a detail. This is fundamental in Ukraine. It's the reason for us to support Ukraine, because there was a blatant violation of the international law. But this principle should be respected and taken into account everywhere and always.
You were saying that in line also after the United Nations that has condemned the locking of water and food. Will you pass on that same message to President Biden when you go, that this is not in line with international law?
This is very important that President Biden and Anthony Blinken made very clear statement, and they asked publicly Israel to defend himself in accordance with the international law. It was very important when Blinken a few hours ago was in Israel, that he made very clear that everything should be done to protect the life of the innocent civilians on both sides. These are very important statements, and that's why we are so close ally with the United States, because we share the same democratic principle, we share the same fundamental values, and the same way we are working together with the United States to support Ukraine, to condemn Russia, to sanction Russia. I think that a common position which is making very clear that we believe in international law, we believe in this idea that there are fundamental principles that must be respected, including when there is such a tragedy. I think that this is something which is fundamental for the future, and also to make sure that we can, as soon as possible, bring more peace, more security, more stability, which is the interest of the world.